Department of Environment. They're leading the execution of a project which is financed by the Global Environment Facility in partnership with the United Nations Development Program. We call it the Rio Mainstreaming Project for short. And what that is, it's finances to ensure that the three conventions that we collectively call the Rio Convention. Three conventions are United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, for which the Office of Climate Change is the focal agency. There's United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification, for which the Guyana Lands and Survey Commission is a focal agency. And there is the United Nations Convention for Biodiversity, Biological Diversity, for which the Environmental Protection Agency is a focal point. The Rio Mainstreaming Project is really to address that same issue as you mentioned.
Yeah.
Sometimes we work in silos and not an integrated way. And these three conventions are complementary. And so this project is basically ensuring that we put the various institutional mechanism in place to ensure that there's collaboration, cooperation, and the Department of Environment is leading that process. So there's regular engagement. They're the ones contracting, supervising, engagement consultants who are going to be working with the three offices to address their capacity constraints and so on in order for them to better and efficiently um, execute their mandate.
Okay. All right.
So
Good.
it's very close working
Very
relationship.
good. Well, we're happy about that. In terms of talking about closeness and collaboration before climate change, maybe 3, 4 years ago, we were here. We started hearing about the low carbon development strategy. Are you in a position to say if there would have been any whether policy strategy of itself from the low carbon development strategy that may be useful that the Office of of Climate Change would possibly be using to push the now agenda?
We have, in fact, continued to implement what would have been articulated in that document, and largely so because it is tied to our bilateral agreement with the Kingdom of Norway.
Okay.
And so the government has a responsibility to ensure that we implement and execute what would have been articulated in that. And so there are a number of things that we have taken forward. And of course, the Guyana Red Investment Fund is what the resources that we would have received under the Norway Agreement um, finance the priorities that would have been identified in the LCDS. And so, since then, what has happened? Since the change of government, we have advanced the process for development of what is called the opt-in mechanism or framework. We successfully concluded the consultancy last year, and so there's a framework document. We are looking to continue that initiative in terms of having more countrywide engagement with communities and also seek to do some piloting. So that is continuing. Um, the project management office, which leads the process with respect to identification and elaboration of proposals for submission to the GRIP Steering Committee, would have successfully in 2017 um, got approval for the ICT Hinterland Connectivity Project. That was a priority in the LCDS, which
Really?
we continued, yes. The Sustainable Land Development Project, which has to do with the whole land use planning and governance and so on, which was launched recently, um, also were priorities in the LCDS. There is a hinterland adaptation project, which we have not yet articulated per se, but we are taking forward with support from other partners some work in Region 9, specifically looking at water resources management.
Okay.
And there's a pilot project which is being financed under that JCCP project that I spoke about. And we are going to be undertaking the assessment, the groundwater hydrology assessment to have a better understanding of the water resources in that area and then come up with the best solution to address the scarcity that the communities experience there. The information and the data coming out from that pilot study will then inform a larger program. So absolutely we are continuing those initiatives And for the other agencies under the Ministry of Natural Resources, you would have heard about the EITI, Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative. That is a commitment out of that, which the government has advanced. Guyana is now a member of EITI. And then you have the whole EU flag work that GFC is advancing. So yes, because the whole thing is about what is good for Guyana, what is good for the country, and how we manage our resources. How do we address the gaps in governance and other legislative and policy areas? And so it makes sense for us to continue along that grain. And in fact, what the GSDS, Guyana Green State Development Strategy, is doing is building on all of those work over the years, but to ensure that all sectors, that we approach our development across all sector on a low emissions path. And so yes, we have continued those work, and we are now ramping all of that up under the whole framework of Guyana becoming a green state and the green state development strategy.
All right, we're almost out of time. They say time flies when you're having fun. I'm not only having fun, but I'm learning. And I must say that Miss Christian is sending me to go and do some more reading, which I have no problem with. And I know that you're also teaching the public. But even before we wrap up our conversation, the support with all of this that's happening with the Office of Climate Change, the support of the bigger giants are necessary, or I should say the support is necessary, and we know that you're already getting the support of government. Let's talk a bit with the few minutes that we have left. Private sector, do you find that you're getting the support, or I should say, is the Office of Climate Change reaching out to the private sector for support?
Yes, we have. Not necessarily for support, but for the private sector to be a part of what we do, to inform the work that we do, to make contribution in a consultation for the development of national strategies. And so yes, we have consistently, we place premium within the Office of Climate Change for consultation. We believe that as Guyanese, we all have a say in where the country is going and how we should frame our policy. And so we have consistently engaged with the private sector. In whether they come at every time we invite them, it's another story. But I must say that they sometimes, of course, the private sector, busy people and so on. But yes, we have been engaging with them. Largely, the fight in Guyana, the climate fight, has been led by government public sector. But there's a role also for the private sector. Our private sector have not, and it's not unique to Guyana, really taken any lead per se in providing solutions. More so now we are seeing a change when we talk about renewable energy and the technology available. Our private sector involved in making available solar heaters, PV systems, LED lights, and so on. So they are involved in that regard. But in terms of low emissions projects or climate change, what we call climate change mitigation, anything that you do to avoid greenhouse gas emission is mitigation. And so in terms of climate change mitigation, we now see them involved in renewable energy, mostly solar. We've heard about the business person somewhere on the quarantine that's brought in the wind turbine. We've also heard about other interests in this area, given where government wants to go for Guyana to transition to 100% renewable. And we believe that the private sector has a really important part to play. In fact, the Green Climate Fund has a private sector facility that the private sector can tap into based on what they forecast that they would like to do, or projects that they would like to implement to access low interest loans and so on. So we would want to this year reach out to the private sector. In fact, the government of Guyana is partnering with the Global Green Growth Initiative with a focus specifically to bring some support and discussion with the private sector, help them understand what are the opportunities, and for them, not government, for them to decide, having learned about all of this, whether it is something that they would want to take advantage of.
Okay, all right, great. Well said. And thank you so very much for coming on Conversations in State. It's certainly been a pleasure.
Thank you, but the time is not enough to talk about all that we do.
I know we promise to bring you back.
Oh, sure, sure.
Okay, viewers, unfortunately, that's all the time we have with you this week on Conversations in State. Of course, this would have been a conversation with the head of the Office of Climate Change, Ms. Janelle Christian. I am Malika Ramsey. Thanks for watching.